Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and jump in. So this is the beginner's guide to Google Classroom. I am recording this so that people who couldn't attend today or who weren't able to register for Digital District Day can watch later. The same goes for you. You're absolutely welcome to pull up this recording later and fast forward, any of that kind of stuff, go to where you need to go in that recording to review anything you need to review. So that will be posted later on our Digital Learning YouTube playlists. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Jessica Pederson. I am a digital learning integration designer, and I specialize in Google tools. Allison is my moderator today. Allison, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I am also in Department of Technology, and today I'll be the moderator. And since it's such a large session, I will do my very best to keep up with all the questions in the Q&A section. The chat we're going to keep just for some special activities that Jessica's got going on. So if you have an actual question, post it into the Q&A, please. And while I'm on the mic, I'm just going to address Sue's question, which is that we've got a lot of family resources already up on the website. I'm going to post that link in response to Sue's question right there. But in terms of webinars and sessions directly for families, I don't have direct access to what those are, but I am sure there will be an abundance of resources to help them out this year.
Thank you. So Allison started to introduce some of our norms today. We have 3 norms today. The very first norm is that thing about the chat and the Q&A. We're going to use the chat for specific activities. I will tell you when to type into the chat. We're going to use the Q&A for questions. And we've set it up so that you can see each other's questions and the answers that go with them. So if you have a question today, feel free to kind of skim that Q&A window first and see, if that question has already been answered. And if not, go ahead and pop it right into the Q&A. And what we like about that is it keeps the answers and the questions together. Whereas in the chat, you can have things go back and forth. I'm hearing someone say that sound is not as good as the last time I presented. I didn't change anything. I'm very sorry. I will just try and talk clearly. For those of you who were in my previous sessions, you know that I do tend to talk kind of fast, and I'm going to try and be nice and slow today. I'll do my best. But again, you can always watch the recording later. So, when you watch the recording on YouTube, if you don't know, you can actually slow down the speed of the video. You can put me at 75% speed and then pause anytime you need to. So remember that recording will be available to you. So again, to be a reminder, we're going to use the Q&A for questions and the chat for specific chat check activities. And I will tell you when to type into the chat. Okay. Our second norm is to have patience and grace today with yourself and with others. This was originally designed to be more of a small group workshop. And then as we watched Digital District Day registration numbers climb and soar and hit over 2,900 people, this became a live streamed workshop. So it's not quite as intimate as it was originally designed to be. I've tried to adjust it to make it still interactive. You're going to actually create a classroom today, all of those things, but just have some patience and grace today, both with yourself, because classroom, there's a lot to know. And if you are a true beginner, there's like any other subject, there's always more to know. So have patience with yourself, but also just be patient with others. We're all trying to kind of make this a productive, that's the word I'm looking for, a productive learning space. And then our last norm today is one of my favorite norms. It's to take what you can today and come back for more later. You will not be a master of Google Classroom by the end of the day today. That takes time, that takes experience. You'll know a lot more than you did before, but you're not going to be a master, and that's okay. If I am pretty good at my job, I am not that good. So learn a few things today, know a few things, be able to do a few things. And then, like I said, you can watch this recording. We have previously recorded webinars. We actually have a webinar solely on assignments and feedback in Classroom. That's its own webinar. We'll be offering more webinars in the future about things like that, about how to do assignments in Classroom. So take a little bit today and come back for more later. We're going to give you lots of resources for both you as an educator, whether you're a teacher or a para or someone supporting a teacher, or whether you are, we also have resources for families. So take what you can today, come back for more later. You don't put pressure on yourself to learn every single thing, okay? All right. This is my agenda for today. We've done some opening moves already. We're going to talk about creating a class. You will all actually create a class. We're going to talk about adding people. We're going to talk about posting and grading, and you will all get a chance to practice posting something. And then I've got some tips and tricks. And so the tips and tricks we might run out of time for, but they're links. So again, it's more resources for you to, that third norm to come back for later if you need it. This slide deck will be available forever. I'm not going to delete it. I'm not going to change it. It's going to always be available to you. Google Slides work like a website. You can actually bookmark this slide deck and come back to it. The link that Allison has been putting into the chat for the slide deck, you can email that to yourself and get back to it later, whatever's going to make sense for you. It's also linked in the Sched page. So underneath where the video is, underneath the session description, kind of at the bottom, there's a link that says session resources, and that's this slide deck. So you can always get to it there as well. And then we'll wrap up with some closing moves. Okay. I wanted to pause here also and do a little bit of framing. In Department of Technology, we think of equity in two ways. We think of equity of access, meaning do students have the devices and apps and tools that they need to learn? And then we also think about equity of opportunity. And equity of opportunity are the things that we ask students to do with technology. We see a wide gap in the things that students in different types of school environments are asked to do. Some places students are just asked to write a paper about something or to copy and paste information to kind of regurgitate information. And then we see other students in other schools who are asked to find a problem in the world, survey people about the problem, come up with a solution for that problem, propose it. Becomes a much richer task, right, than just writing up a paper about something. So in the way that you are, when you're designing learning activities or when you're working with a teacher designing learning activities, that equity of opportunity really falls into the hands of people working with students. DOT takes care of equity of access. We will make sure that students get Chromebooks if they need them. We will make sure that tools and apps are approved and available that are safe for students to use. But that equity of opportunity, what students are asked to do with technology, that's really where you get to come in and get to have a lot of influence for students. And Google Classroom can be used to do boring things where students turn in papers. If that's the only thing you're doing, that's a problem. Not that papers are bad, but again, if it's the only thing you're doing, that's a problem. Or you can also have it, you can use Google Classroom for group work and for collaboration and create critical thinking and things like that. So you really want to kind of balance out those two different needs. Okay, let's talk about creating a class. So there's two ways to get to Google Classroom. And I would like you to go ahead and open up another tab or another window in your internet browser and kind of get the two moved so they're side by side so you can kind of see me and then also kind of see your tab. I'm going to pause, so I'll let you do that. And then once you've got that open and kind of have your windows kind of arranged, there are two ways to get to Classroom. You can get to Classroom by typing in classroom.google.com. Or if you're logged into Gmail or Google Drive, you'll see there's that waffle, I call it the waffle up in the corner. It's technically called the Apps Launcher. But if you click on it, you'll have different Google tools that you can use. And Classroom was one of them. You may have to scroll further down. You can actually rearrange these apps in here. And so I've dragged Classroom to the top. So you have to scroll further down. It may not be at the top. But you click on that waffle and then scroll down till you find this Google Classroom icon. Somebody asked, how do I open another window or another tab? If you're on a MacBook, like an Apple computer laptop, you would push the Command key and then a T, Command T, and that will open up a new tab. If you're on a Chromebook or a PC, like a Windows device, you use Control and then T, and that will open up a new tab. Okay, so I'm hoping that everyone has gotten to Google Classroom in one way or another. And when you get there, it's probably gonna look like this. You might have some tiles on here. It might ask you if you're a teacher or a student. Choose teacher. So tabs you can put side by side. If you click on the tabs, like up here, I've got my tab called DDD Beginner's Guide. I can click on that and drag it and put it next to my other one. So I can drag my things so that they are side by side. If worst comes to worst, if you can't get them to be side by side, you can kind of flip back and forth. So, right, I can have another tab open and I can go back and forth between the two. Okay. So if you can't get them side by side, don't panic. It'll be okay, I promise. You can absolutely just click back and forth between the two tabs. And so when you get to Google Classroom, this is the Google Classroom homepage. This is where, again, you might see some tiles here. All of your classes that you have in Google Classroom will show up as tiles along this page. We're going to create a class. So there's a little plus button up there in the corner. It's next to the waffle. And we're going to choose Create Class. If you don't see a Create Class option, that means that you'll need to submit a help desk ticket in order to create classrooms. But in some cases, you may not need to create a classroom. So for example, a paraeducator may not need to create their own classrooms. They'll often be added to a classroom teacher's classroom. But if you don't see that create class, you'll be okay. You can just listen and follow along and kind of watch my slides. I've got screenshots of everything. But if you see that create class, I'm gonna you go ahead and create a class. And I'll pause and let you do that. Okay. And again, I'm going to remind you right now of our second norm of having patience and grace with yourself and with others. Again, we converted this into a live stream webinar type format. It was meant to be a much smaller group. So don't panic. It's all right. So to review so far, we've gone to Google Classroom, classroom.google.com, and we just clicked on the plus button to create a class. Okay. When you've clicked on that create class, it's going to bring up a little window like this. You have to give it a name. It says it's required. You can rename it later. So type any name you want in there. I often make a sandbox, which is like a safe space to play in. Coders use that term, that they can like test out new code without breaking the app or website. But you can put any name in there you want. You can call it, you can rename this later if you want, whatever you want to call that class. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in some of these, and I will show you how to edit these later. So go ahead and add in a subsection, subject, or room. You can add in all three, you can add in one, pick at least one of them, and go ahead and add it in. Okay. So far, we have created a class. And again, if you can't create a class, don't panic. You will still learn a lot today. Just stick with the slide deck. And I've got screenshots of everything so you can see what it looks like. Otherwise, hopefully you have created a class. You have to give it a name. And then you should have filled out one of these three spaces. You can fill out all three if you want. Totally fine. I'm going to show you how to edit these, and we will edit them later. And then you'll click that create button. So I'm going to give a second for that. Okay. When you click that create button, it's going to take Google Classroom a minute or so to like make your classroom. It's building a brand new classroom for you. And then it's going to open you into that classroom. So it might look something kind of like this, except without the arrows and orange boxes. I put those in on my screenshot. If you didn't add, I see a question, if you didn't add a section or a room, I'm going to show you how to edit those later. Don't worry about it. I promise it's coming. So you are doing great so far. All of you are doing wonderful. So I want to pause here for a second to give you kind of a tour of Classroom. Classroom has three main spaces. You have the stream, and I can tell I'm on the stream because there's this thick, dark line. I've got this arrow pointing to that thick, dark line, and that tells me I'm on the stream. There's also a classwork space, a classwork tab. If I were to click on classwork, that thick, dark line will move over under classwork because then I'm on the classwork tab. So that thick, dark line is going to show me where I am. And then there's also a people tab. The people tab is where all the people go. And again, if I were to click on people, that thick, dark line would move under people. Grades is an invisible space. Students can't see it unless you turn it on, and I would just leave it off. Students are used to looking at synergy for their grades, and so I would not give them a second place to look. So we're going to kind of ignore the grades tab because we're going to leave it off, and so students won't even know it's there. They will only see stream, classwork, and people. I'm going to move a little further over. I'm going to go clockwise around this picture. The little gear or cog is the settings, and that's for the settings for this particular class. If I move down here, you'll see there's a select theme, upload photo button. I've got like a nautical theme happening here, like an ocean boat theme, but you can change it. So you can absolutely go through and select. They have some ones you can choose from. You can also upload your own picture. That's an option here. And then I'm gonna move over here. Again, I'm moving clockwise around. So I'm in the upcoming box. And the upcoming box is fed by due dates. So when you post assignments and they're due soon, they'll actually automatically show up over here. Pretty sweet. The stream is the first place. Remember, that's where we are right now because that thick dark line. The stream is always the first place you see in Google Classroom. You can't change that. That's always where people are put in first when they go to a classroom. And so this upcoming box is always on the stream, which is pretty cool. And then up here, again, rounding out my clockwise direction, I've got I call it the stack of pancakes because we have the waffle on the right side and we've got the stack of pancakes on the left side. And so, but it's just 3 horizontal lines. Sometimes people call it a hamburger menu or a hot dog menu. And that is how you actually navigate between different classes. So if I used to teach high school, and so I would have a different Google Classroom for each period, just so I could, adjust things. If we got something in one class one day and not the other, we could have I could have differences between the classes. And so if I need to switch to a different class period's classroom, I can use this, again, I call it the stack of pancakes to go between different classrooms. Okay. So we're gonna play a game of I Spy. Okay, I'm trying to make this interactive. I appreciate your patience and grace. So go ahead and look at your classroom. If you made a new classroom, if you didn't make a new classroom, you can just kind of like test yourself to see if you remember. But in your new classroom, I want you to go ahead and see if you can find where are your class settings. Go ahead and hover your mouse over where your class settings are. See what you know. Okay, you should have your mouse over that little gear, that little cog or gear. So if I go back here, this is where your class settings are. Okay. All right, next one. I Spy. Where is the People tab? Where would I click to go to the People tab? Go ahead and hover your mouse over the People tab. That one should have been pretty easy. There's the People tab right there. All right. Next one. I Spy. Where would I find the menu that lets me go to other Google Classrooms? This might be a little tricky. How would I get to other Google Classrooms? What thing would I click on? Go ahead and hover your mouse over it. You can actually click on it if you want. It won't hurt anything to click on it. All right, that is up here. It's the stack of pancakes. That's how I get to different classes. Okay, one more. I Spy. How would I know which tab I'm on? Go ahead and put your mouse on top of the thing that tells you which tab you're on. Okay, you should have your mouse over that thick dark line, wherever it currently is. That thick dark line tells you what tab you're on. All right, nice job, everybody. All right, let's talk settings. So I'm actually have you go ahead and click on that gear. So that little gear or cog icon, if you click on it, it's gonna bring you to a screen that looks probably something like this. And the settings are where you're gonna change those names and details. So remember at the beginning, we had to give it a name and then I said, put something in one of those other boxes. Here's where you can change that or add it. So go ahead and change or add something. Maybe add a description. That that sort of thing. Go ahead and change something in there. Okay. If you look down a little further, you'll see that there's a space for a class code. That's where there's that little down arrow that's there next to that code. That's where I can adjust some settings about that class code. The class code is one way for students to join your class. It's not the only way. We will talk a little bit more about it when we talk about students, how students can join your class, but that's where you find that class code settings is under that little down arrow next to the code. There's also some settings here about stream, what students can do on the stream. You'll see if you've got my deck up, I'm on slide 13, that I've got it set so students can only comment. So again, that down arrow, I can change what students can do on the stream. And remember, the stream is one of those tabs, that very first place you're always taken to in Classroom when you enter. And then I can also choose what happens to classwork on the stream. So things I put in the classwork tab, I can determine, I've got mine set so it's hiding them. It's not going to show up things I put in the classwork tab on the stream, but you can make them show up. So again, that down arrow is how you would adjust that. There's also down here, kind of towards the bottom, is a space for Guardian email summaries. I have my Guardian email summaries turned on. The switch is in color, it's to the right. My classroom is pink because of the banner that I have. So my switch is pink, but your color is matches whatever color your banner is. If it's in a color, it's on. If it's gray, it's off. So you can see the one above it is gray. Again, on my slide deck, I'm on slide 13. The one above it is gray, and the one down below is in color. And so this show deleted items is off for me, and Guardian email summaries is on. Okay. Your turn. So I want to kind of give you a little bit of test and see how many of these things you can get through. So I want you to edit the class description. I want you to reset the class code. I want you to change your stream settings. And I want you to turn on Guardian email summaries. So I'm going to give you a minute or so to go ahead and do that. Okay, so to see how much you got done, I'm gonna go over each one here. To edit that class description, it's the second box down. It says class description. Mine says sandbox for playing around with Google Classroom, because I usually call mine a sandbox, but you should have written something in there. To reset the class code, that's actually under this little drop-down arrow. It's kind of small in my picture, I'm sorry. But right next to the class code, there's a drop-down arrow, and one of those options in there is to reset the code. The changing the stream settings are these next two little drop-down arrows where students can, where you can decide if you want students to build a post or comment or not. And then what shows up on the classwork stream, so you should have just changed it. You can always change it again. These settings are never set in stone. And then you should have made your Guardian email summaries be turned on, switched on like this. Okay, so it should be in color. Okay. And then at this point in time, it's really important. You'll see up in the corner of my picture, there's a big save button. You'll need to click the save button on yours to save those changes. But like I said, you can always come back and change them, adjust them, reset them, whatever you need to do inside of Google Classroom. Okay. Let's talk about adding people. So maybe go ahead and click on the People tab so you can see it as I talk about it. There's two kinds of people in Classroom. We have co-teachers And co-teachers all have the same level of permissions. So you who made the classroom are a co-teacher, and then anybody that you have that you have to have that teacher level of access to your classroom, you would also add as a co-teacher. And co-teachers can see all student work and grades for the class. They can add, edit, and delete announcements, items, and people. So basically they have full editing access to the classroom. They can also view or add private comment threads on assignments. So on a particular assignment, there's a space where students can send you a private comment, or you can send a student a private comment. And those are private between anyone who's a co-teacher and the student themselves. And so but any co-teacher can see any private comments that are left for that student or that student has sent. And then any co-teacher in the class can also reuse posts from that class in another class they teach. So it's a really good idea to add relevant people as a co-teacher. So if you are a classroom teacher yourself, you might want to add your administrators so that they can peek in and see, how are students doing? Are they turning stuff in? They can peek into a certain student's work. They can see grades and feedback and that kind of stuff. It's also a good idea to add a grade level team. So anybody who you might want to collaborate with, a collaboration partner, because you can reuse posts between classrooms, it's a good idea to actually add anybody that you might want to share stuff between your classrooms. So for example, I, again, used to teach high school Spanish, and so I had a fellow Spanish 1 teacher that I worked with a lot. We traded lessons and ideas all the time. And so in Google Classroom, she would add me as a co-teacher to her class, and I added her as a co-teacher to my class. And so then if she liked an assignment that I did, she could just take it and put it into her class. And if I liked an assignment that she did, I could take it and put it in my class. And so sometimes we'd even trade off, where she would make all the stuff for 1 week and then I'd take it and then I'd make all the stuff for the next week. So if you have someone that you're collaborating with, it's a great idea to add them as a co-teacher to your own Google Classroom. But anybody who supports students. So if you are a paraeducator, it makes a lot of sense for any teachers that you're working with to add you to their classroom, because then you can access those students' work. You can leave private comments and do those conversations with students. And so anybody, resource teacher, anybody who's supporting it's a great idea to have them added to the class as a co-teacher. You can have up to 20 co-teachers in a class. And so that's usually enough. Every once in a while, it's not quite enough, but for the most part, 20 is enough. And anyone added as a co-teacher gets an invitation email to join. So they have to accept that invite. You can't just magically be in it. You have to be like, yes, I would like to be in it. You have to kind of consent in a lot of ways to get into that class. And so that invitation email, they can either do it right in the email. There's a join button in the email to click to join. Or if that person goes to Classroom, they'll see a tile for your class that you can, that it'll have a join button for them because it knows they've been invited. So the same thing, if you're like a paraeducator or someone who's getting invited to be in a classroom, keep an eye out for that email or go to Classroom to join the class that way. And you'll see up in that teachers section, when you're in that people tab, there's a teachers section, and there's that plus button. This little button here is the button you'd click to add co-teachers, and you can add them via email. So I want to go ahead and pause here and do a chat check. So in the chat, you guys have been doing a great job for the most part of putting your questions in Q&A and your other things in the chat. And so here's a time to use the chat. Who are some people in your school site that you might want to have to give co-teacher access to view your classroom and your students' work? Seeing some answers already come in, thank you. Fellow geometry teachers, administrators, an SLP. If you're PE, you might want to add your entire staff. Yep. Principals, department heads, counselors, librarians, great idea. A literacy coach, yes, to a student teacher. Substitutes can make sense, especially if the thing they're leading is in that classroom. You're going to be out for a day or whatever it is, to contact the sub that you've been assigned if you know who it is and put them in there as a co-teacher. Yes, if you have deans, any department managers, grade level colleagues, nurses who are co-teaching, all sorts of stuff. Yes, these are great ideas. Thank you. Instructional coaches. Remember that you can have up to 20 co-teachers. So once you get past 20, you can't add any more. But yeah, social workers, all of those kinds of people. Great, thank you for sharing. Okay, let's talk about adding students. There are 3 ways to add students. And again, you're gonna do it on that same people tab. People is for adding any people into the classroom. There are 3 ways. The first way is to invite them via email. You can copy and paste a whole list of their emails at once. So when there's the students area has the same little plus person button, and it brings up a window that you can copy and paste a whole list of emails in there at once. You don't have to do it one by one. But if you invite them via email, they have to, again, open that invitation email or go to Classroom to join your class. You can't just like force them in using that invite by email. You can also have students mass add themselves using that classroom code. So you remember in the settings, I had you reset your classroom code. Students can actually type in that code. So you might remember at the very beginning, when we created a class, we had 2 options. We had join class and we had create class. And we clicked on create class, right? But if you clicked join class, students can only join a class. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Students can only join a class, and when they click join class, it asks them to put in a code. And so that class code that you reset and gave a new code to is that code they would enter. So it can actually be a classroom activity, right? To get everybody added in. You know, okay, everybody, right now we're meeting on Zoom. Go ahead and I'm going to model it, open up, you know, in another tab, you know, walk them through and get them added. I will say kind of a good heads up is that a join code can be used by anyone with a Google account to join your class as a student. And so we sometimes have seen, even before distance learning, in-person learning, we saw students who created fake personal accounts, fake personal Google accounts, and would use a class code to join a teacher's classroom and post nefarious, inappropriate things in there. So just kind of a good thing to know is that join codes can be used by anyone. And so if you are going to use the join code, I would say have students use it and then disable it. And that's in that same place. When you are resetting the join code for your class, the same place where you reset it, there's an option to disable it. And that means that nobody can use that code to get into your class. If you're not going to use the code at all, I would say go ahead and just disable it. There's no need to have it if you're not going to use it. But by default, it is enabled. I would not give parents the code. I saw that question pop into the chat. I would not give parents the code just because there's a better way for parents to get information about their students' work. But you could give parents the code to use with their student's account. So if they're logged in, you know, they've logged in as their student's account, the parents could have the code to enter in that way to get the student's account logged in. But I would not add parents as students, like a parent's email as students. And then that brings me to my next bullet point. Make sure that students join the classroom with their SFUSD account. And so again, anybody with a Google account, if they're logged into a personal or like a parent's account and they use that join code, they're gonna end up joining as that, that person, that account. And so you wanna help them make sure that they're logged into their SFUSD account and then join with their SFUSD account. And the reason being that help desk, the place where you can contact and reach out if you're having any issues or trouble, can't help troubleshoot problems with personal emails, but we can troubleshoot problems with SFUSD emails. So if something goes wrong and a student loses access for some reason, we are, you know, we can troubleshoot an SFUSD email, but if it's a personal Gmail, we can't help. So make sure they're joining with their SFUSD account. And then the other thing you can do is use the Google Classroom Synergy integration. And so you can actually use Synergy to enroll your students for you. The thing about the integration to know is that basically what you do in one shows up in the other. And so in the past, we've often recommended that that only be for like more advanced or more intermediate users of Classroom. There's not like a test or anything. You don't have to like show that you know Classroom to use it. We had recommended that usually because it just meant you were more comfortable with what happens in Classroom. But like I said, there's no requirement. So if you don't mind getting every once in a while surprised, like, oh, I didn't know it would do it that, like, you know, just know that it does, you know, basically what you do in one happens in the other. So like students, when it rosters your students into classroom, if a student, you know, drops out of your section in Synergy, they're going to drop out of your classroom. If a student drops out, you know, if you add a student, it's going to get added to your classroom. So that's a nice way again to like sync and, you know, and keep them tied together. It does also, if you're using Gradebook, it ties your gradebook. And so any assignment you add in Synergy shows up in Classroom. Any assignment you add in Classroom shows up in Synergy. Again, whatever happens in one is going to show up in the other. And that link there, I'm on slide 17 of my deck. That link right there in that third way, number 3, is a link to the instructions, and it'll walk you through step by step. It's got pictures. It can help you get that set up. It's pretty. I followed it and I didn't have any issues. You can always submit a help desk ticket if you're having trouble with it, and we can help you through it. But it's, like I said, it's got screenshots and it shows like, click this thing here, put this thing here. If you are syncing the two together, it is live updated. So as students, again, whatever happens in Synergy, so if the student is no longer in your section in Synergy, they will no longer be in your Google Classroom. So that's just kind of like a good thing to know. Okay. Whew. There it is. Okay. Another chat check. I'm going to go ahead and type into the chat. What are some ways that you could build getting students enrolled into your classroom into a lesson or activity? So I gave the example of like, okay, everybody, we're all going to add this right now. But if you wanted to build it into like an activity, excuse me, if you wanted to build it into an activity or into something so it wasn't just like, let's all pause and do this housekeeping thing, you know, share some ideas of ways you could build it in. Someone's talking about like as a do now or an exit ticket. That's great. Using it as an exit ticket. Putting the code on a slide and then having an activity they do. So once they get enrolled into it, then they do something in classroom. Doing it via a check-in. Somebody said they're going to do it with email invitations to make sure they're also getting kind of that routine of checking their Gmail. That's kind of like an adult skill that we kind of just suddenly expect students to have when they become adults. We aren't necessarily great about helping them build that. How do I manage email? How do I open emails? All of that kind of stuff. And so that's a great way to do it. A first week bingo card. That's awesome. I love it. I know we had some people suggest at New Teacher Orientation a scavenger hunt. The different platforms you're going to use with students, having them, you know, get enrolled and logged into that platform and sign up for the class, all that kind of stuff, and then do an activity as part of like the scavenger hunt, and then do, you know, go to the next platform. You know, maybe you're going to use Edpuzzle for like videos and stuff, and so having them get logged into Edpuzzle and practicing an activity there. I see that somebody mentioned Seesaw. Seesaw is really great for K through 2. We generally recommend Google Classroom for grades 3 through 12. And the district is saying this year that all teachers teaching grades 3 through 12 should have a Google Classroom for their students. The Seesaw, again, is like a little bit more of like a younger student-friendly place to manage activities and that kind of stuff. I actually use Seesaw as a high school teacher. I used it in conjunction with Google Classroom. I'd have them, that all the stuff was posted in Google Classroom, and sometimes I'd have them go to Seesaw and do an activity and then come back to Classroom. So you can certainly tie the two together. Pre-K and TK should use Seesaw. Great question. All right. I saw someone mentioned, I think in the Q&A maybe, about getting all these emails. So when you're added as a co-teacher, it also will, Classroom will basically email you every time that you sneeze. And so there is a way to adjust what classes you're getting emails from. So again, when I was a Spanish teacher, I'd have that other Spanish 1 teacher, you know, I'd be in her class. And so at first I would get emails like that one of her students turned in something late, that she posted a new assignment. And I was like, I don't want to know all those things. And so I would actually just turn off emails for her class. So in that stack of pancakes, remember we talked about the stack of pancakes? If you click on it, all the way at the bottom, there's a settings bar. And the settings bar allows you to adjust which emails you're getting. And so a lot of times I forget that I've been added to a classroom. I get, one of the things we recommend principals do actually is they can create a classroom to help manage information and asks for their staff. And so I get added to a lot of principal classrooms just to kind of help and coach them to use it effectively. And I always forget until I get that first email from the class, like, oh, that's right, I got to turn off emails for that class. So you can adjust the emails you're receiving, like what types, what sort of events are sending you an email. And you can also choose which classes. I can turn off emails entirely for a class if I don't want it. So I'm not going to go deep into these steps here, especially if you don't have any other classrooms yet, or if you're not part of any other classrooms. They don't make a whole lot of sense because there's nothing really to see or do. But this is slide 19, and this again is part of that third norm. Take what you can today and come back for more later. This is going to be a come back for more later, because you can adjust what emails you're getting from classroom. Okay. All right. I've seen several questions about Guardian email summaries. I had you turn it on, and then I didn't say anything else about it. I was being very mysterious. I'm on slide 20 now. And so with families and classroom, there is no special login for families to be able to look at the classroom. That is different in Synergy. They can look and see, they've got parent view access so that they can see their students' grades and all that kind of stuff. That is not the case in Classroom. There's no such thing as Classroom view. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm going to repeat it again. It's not a very good practice to add parents as students to the class because it doesn't tell them what they want to know. Parents want to know, what is my kid missing? What kind of stuff is due soon? What announcements have been posted? And adding them as a student means that they can't see what other students have done or what stuff other students are missing. It wouldn't make sense for Classroom to tell students that so-and-so is missing an assignment, right? So don't add them to Classroom, only have your students as students in Classroom. And so if parents want to actually see the class, see what the classroom looks like, they can ask their student to log in and they can see it that way. Parents also have student login information in parent view. So they can actually log in as the student themselves. They have the password and email address to be able to log in, so they can see Classroom that way, and they can see like their own students' view of Classroom. Guardian email summaries will send to families daily or weekly emails with updates, and families get to choose. Each guardian chooses if they want daily or weekly emails. And so on slide 21, I talk a little bit more, and I've actually got an example, a picture here of Guardian email summaries. It has to be turned on in the settings, and so I had you all turn it on. You can go back in the settings anytime and turn it off. So if you're like, I don't want to mess with this right now, this is something I'm going to come back for later, you can absolutely turn it off. But like I said, it's going to send a personalized either weekly or daily email, and it's a summary. And for that particular guardian, it includes their students' missing work, anything that's missing, anything that's coming up due soon that's assigned to their student, and then any announcements posted since the last email that was sent out. So if they're getting weekly emails, that's anything posted in the last week. If it's daily emails, it's anything posted in the last day. And so we find that really gives parents and families the information they're looking for around their particular student's work inside of Classroom. Co-teachers, any co-teacher can add a guardian to a student, and any student can have up to 10 guardians. Currently, the Synergy integration unfortunately does not pull guardian emails. I wish it did. That'd be so slick and smooth. It does not. You do have to enter them individually, even if you have the integration turned on. But it does at least, you can actually go to Synergy and copy the emails and paste it in. And what's nice is that once you've entered in a student's guardian email, a student's guardian's email, so that, parents' email, once you've put it in for that student as a guardian, Google knows that that's probably their guardian for all the other Google Classrooms they're in. So if you go into invite guardians, you see there's already some guardians there. It's because other teachers have put in the guardians already, and Google talks and it knows that in all of their classes, they've got the same guardians at home or in their family. So you might see some guardians already filled in. Guardians also, again, have to accept the invitation email. So when you add them, it's going to say like, you've been added as a guardian for this student. Is this your student? Do you want to receive emails? And they have to say, yep, I want to get emails. Sometimes that email does go to their spam folder. So if they're like, I didn't get the email, check their email address for typos, confirm it's the right email address, and then have them check their spam folder. I saw a question about translations. Currently, Guardian email summaries are only available in English. So this picture I've got here to the left, again, I'm on slide 21. It's only in English, but we've had really good luck with families being able to, with a little bit of help, being able to basically copy all of the text and paste it into Google Translate, and then being able to know what that Guardian email summary says. Google is working on it. They do know that it's a problem that it's only in English. They've been really focused on Meet lately and getting Google Meet up to speed for Google Meetings, or for like classroom meetings, but they're turning their focus on Classroom, and we're going to see a lot of updates in Classroom this school year. So fingers crossed that is something that they're going to get changed and updated, because currently they are only in English, unfortunately. However, we do have a website here. I've linked it down here on the bottom of slide 21. This is a family page for families, and it is translatable so that families can understand what Guardian email summaries are like and what they look like. And there's even a picture of that invitation email, so they know what to look for. So you're welcome to share that. It explains, what does the Guardian email summary tell you? It explains, what to look for and all that kind of stuff, what to know about it. That stuff is all there. And again, this is a district website page, and so it is translatable. Okay. All right. Let's talk posting and grading. So once you've built your classroom, usually one of the first things you want to do, get students in there, whatever, you're like, I want to put stuff in it, right? That's the whole point of having a classroom. When you add content, you're going to do that on the classwork tab. So I'm actually going to pause here for a second and have you go back to your classroom. And we haven't looked at it for a second. Go back to your classroom if you've got it open, your new one. And I want you to locate the classwork tab and click on it so you go to classwork. I'm going to wait a second, pause, and let you do that. Okay, so you should have clicked on the classwork tab. That dark thick line is going to move under classwork so you know you're there. So if you're looking back at my slide deck for a second, there's a big create button at the top of the classwork tab, and that's how you're going to add all of your stuff. And the first thing you want to add are topics. So topics organize your page. And so you can see here in my screenshot, this April 27th through May 1, that's a topic. So it looks a lot like a heading, and then stuff sits under it, right? You'll also notice that topics show up here on the left side of the screen. So I've got I do mine by dates, and so I've got all these dates along the side, and students can click on one of those topic names, and it's going to filter the classwork page with just the stuff under that topic. So that create button is how you're going to again add those topics. I click on create, and topic is here at the bottom. You want to be really strategic with what students see first on the page. Studies show time and time again that people in general, not just kids, but people in general do not scroll very far down a page. And so you want to make sure that the most relevant stuff is at the top so that there's really no excuse for not seeing it. It's the first thing that they should see when they come to classwork. So you'll notice that my topics here, again, I do mine by dates because I think that makes it really easy to find stuff. Previously, before we were doing distance learning, when I was in person with students, I'd often do it by like unit or chapter because I could always be like, no, we're in chapter 2. Like I could help students, I could see they're on the wrong one. But now that you don't have that ability to be able to help them know which chapter we're in, I really recommend the dates because it makes it really clear. And if a guardian or a parent is looking over their shoulder, they're gonna be like, oh, it's the dates for this week. That just makes sense. So I highly recommend doing it by dates. But again, being strategic about what students see first on the page. So you'll see my dates go in reverse chronological order. Things get older as they go down. So your turn. I want you on your Google Classroom classwork tab to use that create button. And I want you to add 3 topics. Okay, and just kind of see what that's like. Once you've added 3 different topics, that means you have to click the create button 3 times, right? You click it once, choose topic, make a topic, click it again, make a topic, okay? So add 3 topics. And then I want you to practice renaming or deleting a topic. So try and rename one, try and delete one. And then I also want you to practice rearranging them. And I'm gonna give you a hint. For these bottom 2 here, there's, when you make a topic, there's 3 vertical dots. I oftentimes call it the snow person menu. It looks like a little snow person. The 3 vertical dots button is where you're gonna find some of those options. So I'm gonna give you a couple minutes here, create 3 topics, use that 3 vertical dots to rename one, use that 3 vertical dots to delete one, and then practice rearranging them as well. Okay, so you maybe aren't quite done yet. That's totally okay. I just wanted to review a few of the things I asked you to do. So I saw someone said they didn't see a rearrange in the 3 dots. When you have more than one topic, it's going to give you an option to move it up or move it down. That's the thing you'll see in those 3 dots. I was being a little tricky when I called it rearrange. You can also drag and drop your topics. So I can click on the topic's name and hold down and drag it up. You can also try doing that. Go ahead and give that a try. Okay. I saw someone asked in the Q&A, how do you add dates to the topics? And so I'm going to actually go back a slide. Oops, go back a slide. My topics, I just named as the date. So when I clicked that, create button and chose topic, then I could, type in whatever I wanted to, and I typed in the dates. So I typed in April 27 through May 1. And that's how I put the dates on there with my topics. Yeah. Okay. So remember, topics are the backbone. They're going to help organize and structure your class. They make it really much easier for students to be able to navigate inside that, that space. So we talked about the topic. Under that create button, you can also add an assignment. An assignment is where students turn something into you. So you're going to collect something from them. You can also use it as a way to mark things as done, like a check off. So even if it's something that, they're not going to give you something, they just need to do something. I know somebody talked about with the class code, they were going to have students, enter in the class code and get logged in and then do an assignment while they're in there. The assignment could be get logged in and then mark it as done. And so there's a mark as done option there. In an assignment, there's also some really powerful sharing options if you're using Google Tools. So some of you were in my earlier session talking about different ways to use some Google Tools. We talked about, I gave an example of using a Google drawing as a diagram of the human heart. So the Google drawing file is a picture of the human heart, and students drag the text boxes to label the parts of the human heart. Google Classroom, because it's a Google Drawings file, I can add that, attach that to the assignment as a template, and then tell Google Classroom to make a copy of that for every single student. So every single student gets their own copy of the human heart diagram activity to do, and nobody gets each other's copy. So there's lots of, if you're using Google Tools, again, Google Classroom works best with Google Tools. You can attach Word and PowerPoint files, but it really doesn't work nearly as smoothly. I would recommend creating things in Google Drive, like creating, a Google Slides file instead of a PowerPoint, creating a Google Docs file instead of Word, because you have so many more options. Under this create menu, there's also the option to create a question. Twisting my words. A question allows you to pose one short answer or multiple choice question to the class. And there's lots of settings in there, like can they see each other's answers? Can they reply to each other? Can they see a graph of, if it's a multiple choice question, can they see the results? You can, adjust all of that as needed. I've seen this work really well as like a weekly check-in, like how are you doing just as a human this week? Make it multiple choice or short answer, make it private so students can't see each other's. I've seen it also used as like a discussion board where you pose a bigger question and then, students answer, and you've got it set up so they can see each other and reply to each other. And so it becomes a big discussion board. So there's lots of ways to use that question feature, but it's just one single question. So if you want to ask multiple questions, you'd want to, in one thing, some sort of like practice activity or like a formative assessment type dealio, you'd want to use Google Forms, because then you can do multiple questions. A question inside a classroom is just one question. A material is very rarely used, we see. It's something for students just to look at or read, but it can clutter your Google Classroom page. So I'm actually gonna go back a couple slides. So I'm back on slide 23 just to show something for a second. You'll see here that each of the items shows up as a separate thing. And remember we talked about how students may not scroll very far to find stuff. So it's in your best interest to create, one thing that has the thing they read and the thing they do in one thing. And that's gonna be an assignment because you can turn it in. A material is just to give stuff. There's no opportunity, there's no spot in the material for students to give something back to you. So we see material used very rarely. It's just not as common. I'm back on slide 25. And then under this create button, you'll also see that reuse post. We talked about, remember when we were talking about co-teachers, that co-teachers can reuse posts from each other's classes, and that's where you would find this. You can reuse posts from any class where you're a co-teacher, but that also includes your own class. So if I have students, I want them to do the same activity, once a month, I can actually reuse the same post from inside my own classroom, and I don't have to copy and paste or any of that kind of stuff. It's very slick and smooth. So I would I'd recommend checking that out. You can pull from other classes, but also even like from your own class. Okay. A general tip or trick, just kind of like a pro tip, a thing to do, is in any Google tool, but especially in Classroom, looking for those down arrows or those snow person, those 3 vertical dot buttons. That's where you're going to find that extra stuff. So like the topics, remember those extra things were under that snow person menu. The little down arrow, that's where we found like those extra settings in that settings window we were looking at. So kind of keep an eye out for those and click on those when you see them, because you'll get to see what's in there. So for example, when you're creating an assignment, somebody asks like, can you assign to just 1 or 2 kids? And you absolutely can, but that's under a down arrow. So it's not necessarily super obvious at first if you're not looking for it, I would say. But yeah, you can assign to individuals. So for example, if I have an IEP student and I need to create a modified version of an assignment just for that one student, I can reuse a post and reuse the assignment I already have, modify it as needed. And then I can choose that it only gets assigned to that one IEP student and none of the other students see it. So it's pretty cool that students can only see what they are assigned. So I can also do that with groups. I can assign, just a small group to work on something and a different small group to work on a different thing. And, they can't see each other's stuff because it's not assigned to them. They can only see what's assigned to them. But again, that's under a down arrow. I have to look for that. You can schedule a post to automatically be posted later. So if like you're really on your game and I've got my stuff ready for tomorrow, but I don't want it to be posted until tomorrow, I can tell Classroom like automatically post it for me at 9:05 tomorrow morning. So that's a pretty cool feature. You can also save it as a draft. So someone said, how do I make it private? So I don't want everybody to see it yet. I'm not done with that assignment yet. I can also save it as a draft. And that's again, going to be under a little down arrow. It's not, super obvious without looking for that down arrow. We talked about having Classroom make a copy of, like a Google Doc for you, making a copy for each student. That's under a down arrow. And then even attaching different types of files, that's under a down arrow too. So you just want to kind of keep your eye out, when you're in Classroom, looking for those down arrows and looking for those snow person, that 3 vertical dots. Those buttons are that's like a pro tip for you. So I want to give you a chance to do something. And I'm going to give you several minutes. So, take your time. I want you to create an assignment, just to make an assignment. It doesn't have to be a real assignment you're going to give. You can delete it later. Don't worry. Just a way to practice. So I want you to go ahead and click that create button and choose assignment. And then I want you to give it a name. Go ahead and type in some instructions. Add an attachment using that add button. Over on the side panel here, you're going to, you see there's lots of little down arrows. Click on all of them. Click on all the down arrows and see what they do. Okay, give it, add some things over here. If you get all the way to the bottom of my list, you can add a rubric. You can use the plagiarism checker. All sorts of things in here. There's a down arrow up here by the assign button. So play with all those down arrows. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, and I'm going to answer some more questions in the Q&A while you're doing that. But yeah, go ahead and just play with it. Just make an assignment. That's the best way to learn, is just to try it, trial by error, doing it. I'm seeing a few questions come in. I'm just going to go ahead and answer them verbally rather than try and type an answer. Someone pointed out they can't select any specific students yet. That's true. If there are no students in your classroom, there's nothing to select. But that is where that menu, that drop down, that little down arrow is where you would choose different students when you have them in your class. I saw someone asked, where did I see it? Maybe I imagined it. Never mind.
Jessica, there's a question about who a student in a classroom and what they can see. So if I'm a student in a classroom, I can't see the whole student list of the other participants.
Yes.
However, if you, Jessica, are the teacher and you post an assignment and I have a question about that assignment, I can post my comment in the classwork section saying, Ms. Pederson, is this the assignment you want me to turn in this week? And then other students would see my comment with my name. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Their students can see who else is enrolled in the class. I know that sometimes there are certain instances where we don't want students to know if it's some sort of special support class or things like that, where you don't want students to know who else is in there. That's not a thing to turn off. It just is. What people have done in the past is actually create separate classrooms for one for each student so that they can, they've got their own space essentially. And you may have noticed in that assignment space that I could post to multiple classes under that for box in the assignments. There's that down arrow. I can choose different classes. I could post to all of those classes, all those students at once. But there's no way for them not to see who else is enrolled if you have more than one student enrolled. As far as the comments go, there are two kinds of comments. There are private comments, and that's just between the student and any co-teacher in the class. Co-teachers can see all private comments and can send private comments. And then there's also class comments. And so with class comments, that's where, again, a student can put a question. I oftentimes use it as a place where students would put a question, and then I would empower other students. Like, if you know the answer, go ahead and answer it. I don't need to be the sole container of all knowledge. And so I would often encourage students to kind of like help each other out by, answering each other's questions in there. And then if, something was being answered incorrectly, or if, no one knew, then I could go ahead and answer. And I found it was like a nice place to give students a place to like just ask the question, but also a place where other students could see, oh yeah, I had that question too. Okay, there's the answer. Yeah. Okay. I saw Heidi asked a question about rubrics. So if you are in the rubrics area, you're creating a rubric, it's a little bit, I think it's a kind of an awkward rubric creator. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you create a rubric in there, you can actually reuse that rubric in any class that you teach. And it's the same thing, like if you've got a collaboration partner and you're in their class and they've added a rubric that you two are both going to use, then you can actually just reuse it and pull it onto your assignment as well. So once you get a rubric in there you like, you can just keep reusing it. You don't have to make one every single time. But the rubrics are a little funky with like the point values and like the descriptors and that kind of stuff. We have resources on since this is a beginner thing and rubrics are like level 1.5, maybe even level 2. I'm not going to go deep into rubrics here on how to make them, but that is in our Google Classroom feedback and assignments webinar. There's actually already a recording posted from this past spring. There's more information about that in there. We will restart that webinar in mid-September, late September, that we will give you more information and help you out with rubrics if that's something you're really interested in. That's coming. Just kind of a heads up. We are spending the first part of the school year, the first 30 days or so, we're going to focus on basics. Our team has been instructed to do webinar basics, so you'll see more Google Classroom basics, that kind of stuff. But the more like again, like that level, like 1.5, level 2 type of stuff in Classroom is that that stuff is coming. It's just coming after that first 30 days. So like mid-September, late September, you're going to start seeing, more in-depth, more advanced type of webinar topics, and feedback and grading in Classroom definitely has enough about it that we can do a webinar solely on that. So that will be coming in mid to late September, but there is already a recording posted. We did it in the spring. Okay. Great. I'm gonna go ahead and move on. Remember that I want to actually, before I move on, I lied. Before I move on, I'm on slide 27. In this assign button up here, mine is gray because I didn't put anything in here. Once you put in a title, I think is all it takes. It will turn into a color so you can click on it. This little down arrow next to it, so in my picture, it's the only thing that's in color. This little down arrow, that's where I would schedule something in advance or where I can save it as a draft. And if I save it as a draft, students cannot see it. It's not until I go in and officially assign it or post it that students can see it. So if you're working on something and you're like, I'm not sure that it's ready yet, you can save it as a draft. Okay. Whew. You guys are doing a great job hanging in there. I know this is not an ideal format by any means for learning how to use Google Classroom, but you guys are troopers, and I really appreciate all of the patience and grace that you're having with us and with yourselves. You're doing a fabulous job, and just the more you interact with the classroom, the better you'll get at it, I promise. You can always come to office hours. We will happily talk you off the ledge of Google Classroom. It does get better the more that you do it, I promise. Okay. All right, I wanted to pause here again since we're talking about assignments and just kind of bring up that equity of opportunity we talked about earlier. It's really important to vary the things you're having students do in classrooms, so it's not always just the same stuff. There are absolutely times when doing like a more like rote practice activity is right and applicable and makes sense and is important for students to develop a skill or a competency. That totally makes sense. But that shouldn't be all that students are doing. You will really want to use, Classroom has so many features about it, you know, for group work, for giving students a chance to collaborate on something, for, you know, being able to do like multiple phases of a project. There's so many pieces there that, you know, I really want to encourage you to kind of really challenge yourself this year, that it's totally okay to start simple and start with, you know, simple activities and that kind of stuff, but don't stop there. Keep encouraging students to do deeper things, bigger things, to build those life skills. When can you give them opportunities to be creative? When can you give them times to, you know, reflect on something? That reflection is part of the thing you ask them to do is they turn something in and you give them feedback and they have to reflect on it before they get a grade. You know, some of those kinds of things. I'm on slide 29. I've linked in the graduate profile. If you are unfamiliar with this, it's the set of competencies that our district's goal is that all students by 2025 graduate with these competencies. And so feel free to check those out. I also, if you were in my earlier morning session, I've got this linked here. This is my Teaching and Learning with Google Tools deck. That's the session I did this morning to really kind of give you some ideas of out-of-the-box ways to use Google Tools. And remember, Google Tools work really well inside a classroom. They're meant to go together. And then I've also got linked here my Google for Instruction site. And this is a website that breaks it down into instructional practices. And so the instructional practices, like, you know, how do I foster group work? And it's going to, you know, give you some Google tools to help with group work. How do I manage free response questions? Because we know that free response questions, you know, give us a better understanding of what students know, but it's hard to read a lot of free response questions. So like, how do I manage free response questions? How do I manage projects with students? And it's all about, it looks at instructional practices and then helps you with the tools for those practices. So it's like, instead of it being tool focused, it's like pedagogy focused, and then how the tool can support that. Okay. So I wanted to actually give you a chance here to kind of get creative and think of some ideas. My earlier sessions were actually full of ideas. So I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of, you know, idea share and crowdsource some ideas. So in the chat, I've got 2 questions. This is a little bit different than before. I want you, excuse me. I want you to pick one question, put the letter of the question, and then the answer. Oh my goodness. Okay. So like if I'm to answer question A, I'll put the letter A and then followed by my answer before I push enter. That way we know which question you're answering. So question A, what could you have students do in groups in classroom? Now, to be fair, you're not committing to anything. I'm not going to check back in with you in a month and be like, did you do the thing you said? But just like kind of brainstorming some ideas, like some things that might work for you in classroom. What could you have students do in groups? And then question B, what learning activities could you ask students to do in classroom that draw on their creativity? You know, creativity is not just for art class. It's not just for, you know, the VAPA kinds of classes. So, you know, what are some things that you in your subject area or you working with another teacher, what are things that you could, you know, do to draw on creativity and have students be creative? Looking good, looking good. I see people saying you can have students write or draw something. Giving choice is always a great idea. Studies show time and time again that choice improves learning. It enhances it every time. Students are more likely to turn in more work and to be more interested and engaged in that work when they have choices. Always great. Doing peer feedback and collaboration. That's a really great way to have students, look at one student's paper all together and talk about it and do different things with it. Excuse me, like a bug in my throat or something. Planning, doing team, that's like an A and B together, team music composition projects, all sorts of stuff. Collaborate, discuss, divide and conquer, or share personal experiences. Study groups, yes. So with that question, just like how an assignment you can assign to individual students, I could assign it to 3 students out of the whole group and that, only those 3 students see it. Questions are the same way. So I can actually assign a question to a group of, 3, 4, 5 kids, and they can discuss the question themselves, like a small mini discussion board. Oh, Sam, I love it. Have students use Google Arts and Culture to curate a space, a collection, and then post it to the classroom. Yes, draft storybooks, having students learn between different, move between different tools, but always referring to classroom as a central hub. Yes, those are all really great. Posting things start with a specific letter sound, interviewing themselves about their families, writing a report, that multimodal type of stuff where it's multimedia, those are all really, really great. That looks really, so many great ideas. I love it. I love it. This is always my favorite part when I ask you guys for ideas, is you're like, do all these like creative, crazy things. I love them. Okay. I wanted to go ahead. I want to talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to give you a break. I realize we've been doing this for like a good hour already, and you guys are real troopers, and I'm so proud of you. I want to talk about due dates, and then I'm going to give you a break. Okay. So, due dates in classroom are good and bad, just like they are in real life. Due dates can cause anxiety. That's absolutely true. They are, especially with life kind of being really different right now, and we're kind of in this weird mash of like school and life in the same place. It used to be before we had like a special designated space and time for school, and now we do not. I don't have children, but I have cats, and they bug me all day. And it's like, that was never a thing. I used to just like work when I had to do work. And so that weird mash of space can make it hard for students to meet deadlines sometimes. And that can cause anxiety, when they don't have access to, if it's a shared device in a family, or if the Wi-Fi isn't working that well one day. It can be really, really hard if they have, maybe like childcare, like they babysit siblings, or they have to like help with other, people in the house, caring for the people in the house. It can be really hard to meet deadlines sometimes. With that said though, due dates also feed a lot of spaces in classroom. So I'm going to go back for a second, actually, to this. I'm on slide 27. There's a due date thing here. Right now, in this picture, it says no due date. If you leave it as no due date, classroom just assumes it's never due. But when you pick a due date, that assignment shows up in different places in classroom automatically. So I'm going to go back here. Now I'm back on slide 31. Due dates populate the guardian email summaries. So remember that part where it'll say like what's missing for a student. That's anything where the due date has passed and the student hasn't turned it in. It also populates the upcoming section on the stream. We saw that when we first got into classroom, that little box in the lower left-hand corner of the stream, that automatically gets populated with due dates. It actually, classroom sends reminder emails automatically to students. And so, it's like, remember, this thing is due tomorrow, right? That's done automatically based on the due date you select. And then every classroom also has a Google Calendar, that goes with it. And that calendar gets populated by the due dates in classroom. So if it's just due on a day, it'll put it as like an all-day event at the top. If it's due like at a specific time, like I can say it's due at 1 p.m. Maybe our class is going to meet at 1 p.m. So I want it turned in before the class is going to meet. That's the goal. And so, I can set it that it's due at 1 p.m. and that'll actually show up at 1 p.m. on the calendar. All those things get fed automatically just by you selecting a due date. So it's important to kind of balance those two things, that like very realistic, very understandable need for flexibility and the anxiety around due dates, with the fact that classroom can really help remind students and keep them on track and keep parents and families informed about their students' work. You have to kind of balance those. And so you really want to have a conversation with families. How firm are your due dates? How long is the grace period? If they turn in within 2 days, do they still get full credit? Do you take off, a point every day? That kind of stuff. Is there a penalty? In person, I used to do that if it was late, um, from when it was due until the end of the grading period, that it was 50% credit. And I didn't care if it was like a month behind. I would still take it for 50% credit. That was an in-person, when we had class in person, that was my grading policy. But what do students do if they need more time? Do they ask you nicely? Is there a form they fill out to apply for more time? What is going to be your policy? So I just want you to, kind of keep in mind that you want to think about that. If you are supporting a teacher with their classroom, you want to make sure that you really understand that due date policy and how that teacher works with due dates so that you can support students. So again, if you're like a paraeducator working with students, supporting, you'd want to make sure that you very clearly understand that teacher's grading the late deadline policy so that you can, again, kind of support and make sure you're giving that same messaging. Okay, we're going to pause here. You've done a great job listening for so long. I want to give you a few minutes again to kind of stand up and stretch, to take a quick lap around your house, go high five somebody in your house because you're doing a great job. Just give you a chance to kind of move your body. If you need to check email or something like that, feel free to go ahead and do that. I'm going to give you can we do 4 minutes? I have so many other things I want to tell you. So let's our goal is 4 minutes to go ahead and do what you need to do. Go to the bathroom, get water, again, take a lap around your house. I'm serious about the high five someone, even if it's like your cat, because you're doing an awesome job today. So 4 minutes on the clock, go. Okay, start wrapping up your break. If you wandered away, come wander back. Gonna move on. While you're working on coming back, I'm going to answer a few questions that I saw in the Q&A. Someone mentioned the class drive folder. In the classwork tab, there's an icon at the top that says class drive folder. One of the things that Google Classroom creates for you when you make the classroom, when you create the classroom, is it gives you your own folder. You can put stuff in there. I've never really used it. Classroom, as you attach things, is going to put stuff in there for you. I've never really used that feature up at the top, but it is there. So if there's a reason you could have students click on that to find stuff in the folder, I tend to just attach stuff right to the classwork page. But it is an option. It's a feature that you have, that it does create a classroom folder for you. Somebody asked a question about the Prop G 18 PD hours and how you get credit for this workshop. You should have signed in for the whole day once. There's no sign in for each individual workshop or session. You're signing in one time for the whole day. And when you do that, you'll just choose if you qualify for the 18 hours, the 18 PD hours, Prop G hours, there's a question on that sign-in form that asks you that 18 hours is one of the options. So you would choose that. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on. You guys are doing great. We just have like 15 more minutes and we're done. So crazy, almost over. Okay, I'm going to skip that. I'm going to move on. I'm on slide 33. So hopefully you're back with us. I am on slide 33. I wanted to talk a little bit about turning things in. Excuse me. Got allergies or something, I guess. Okay. Classroom will tell you how many students have turned something in, which can be a nice, quick, at a glance. I can see 25 students have turned in. I'm waiting on 3 more. Okay, good to know. But to be considered turned in and done by Google Classroom, that just means that students have clicked the turn in button. So that's something I've got a picture of it here on the right side. It's pretty obvious that it exists, that there's a turn in button, but it's an easy thing to forget. You can be, I've got a Google Doc here that's attached. I could be writing in my Google Doc and then I'm like, okay, I'm done, great. And I just close that Google Doc and I forget to go back to Classroom and, turn it in. So that turned in number can be a little deceiving. If you're like, only 2 kids have turned it in, that's so weird. It might be that students are done, but they haven't clicked turned in. And so this is the thing that you just kind of have to practice with students. It's a routine, just like anything else. In your physical classroom, maybe there would have been a routine that students always turn their work into the green basket when they're done. And that first few weeks of school, you're like, remember when you're done, it goes to the green basket, right? Because they'll finish, they'll just sit there and be like, oh, I'm sorry, let me mute this. I'm right by a window with Franklin Street on the side. You might have to practice that routine, just like you would have in person with, reminding students that when stuff's done, it goes here. When stuff's done, it goes here. Same idea, that when you're done with your work, remember to click turn in. When you're done with your work, remember to click turn in. Go back and click turn in. I know it says it's done late. It's okay. It's not late. I know it was done on time. Go ahead and, click turn in. That reinforcing that pattern and that routine is going to be really important so that students learn that that's what the routine is. And so it's just going to take practice and repetition at first. What's neat about it is once students click that turn in button, Nancy said, I'm going to bring this up really quick. That's great. Students last spring would hit turn in, but not attach an assignment. So if you have Classroom make a copy for every single student, it's automatically attached. Their copy is attached. If students are creating something on their own, you'll see there's this add or create button that they would attach it to and then click turn in. And again, that's all part of those routines. So you're gonna have to have a little bit of grace and space for students at the beginning of the year as well, to be like, if you turned it in, but there's nothing attached, please attach something. When the students do click turn in, what Classroom does is it treats the assignment like a piece of paper. When students gave you a piece of paper in person, they couldn't write on it anymore, right? Classroom does the same thing behind the scenes. When they click turn in, if they try to go back to that document, it's going to tell them they can't edit it because Classroom automatically switched editing rights away from them to you as the teacher. Any co-teacher now suddenly has editing rights on this document and students can't edit it anymore. So the only way that students can edit it again is this turn in button switches to an unsubmit button. They can take it back. If they turn it back in late, it's going to tell you it's done late. You'll know, but they can take it back, or when you're done with it, you can return it. So in order for students to get those editing rights back, teachers have to return the item. And there's a big return button. You can't miss it when you're in the teacher side. And so a lot of times we see teachers grade that work, go ahead and give feedback and grade it and return it so students look at it. Students get an email that you returned it, but you also don't have to add a score. So you could have students, if we're all working on a slide deck, everybody's going to make slide 1, turn in your deck. I'll give some feedback and I'll return it. You don't have to put a grade on it to return it. And now everybody makes slide 2 and they turn it back in. But I have to give it back to them so that they can edit it again, because it locks their editing permissions. They can't edit it unless I give it back to them, just like a piece of paper. So it's just like a good thing to know. And you can return like an individual student. So like if you have students going at different paces, I can return just one student's slide deck back to them to give them more time to edit, and then they can turn it back in. It doesn't have to be the whole classes at once. So just like a piece of paper where you can give it back to one kid at a time, same idea. Or you can pass them all back at once. Okay. So some things about grading and feedback inside a classroom. Again, there is an entire separate 1-hour webinar about grading and feedback in classroom. So this is not comprehensive of everything that there is to know about grading and feedback. But what's nice is I've got a picture here of the teacher side. You don't have this in your classroom because you don't have any students get to turn stuff in. This is what it looks like when students turn stuff in. So I can see a preview. In this case, it's like they're diagramming parts of a stage for me. And so they dragged and dropped text boxes to label parts of the stage in this assignment. And so I can see kind of a preview of each student to see what it looks like. I can see here that this is turned in. These students have turned it in. It's telling me this one has been turned in late. So it doesn't tell me when it was turned in, but I know it was late. And I can click on each of these to see the student's work. Remember that students have to attach their work. If I didn't, so in this case, I made a copy for each student. It was already attached because I gave them a copy. If I did not give them a copy, they have to attach it for me to see it. If they don't attach it, I can't see it. You can leave comments on individual students' work. We've talked about that. And any co-teacher can leave comments on students' work. You'll see up here, that's that return button I was talking about. And so I can just check individual students and return. So I can return just this student's work, or I can check and return all students' work at once. So it's a nice, easy feature for returning things. And I can enter grades in right here. And any co-teacher in a class can enter grades and can return work and that kind of stuff. So, you can certainly, have other people in the class, help out, any other teachers in the class help out with feedback and grading and that kind of stuff, if that makes sense for whatever, whatever you're doing. I just want to point out that learning happens when we close that feedback loop and we learn from mistakes. And so remember, you don't have to give a score back to return something. I can I can leave feedback on it, give it back to them, say like, you need to respond to the feedback and turn it back in, and then return it again one more time with the score. So there's lots of ways to, again, use Classroom in a really powerful way that really enables learning rather than just doing it the same way that we've always done it. Okay. Yes, we are on track. I'm so excited. 10 more minutes and we got the right amount of stuff. So one last chat check for today. What is something you could ask students to submit in Classroom besides a typed essay? So this should be a super easy one. But what are some things you could have them submit just besides like a typed paper, right? Someone says a picture of the recycled art project. That was a beautiful first answer. Students don't have to only make digital things. You could have them build a giant tower out of toothpicks and marshmallows, take a picture of it, and submit the picture. That the tower was a thing that they did, but the picture is that evidence. Submit multimedia, you can submit videos, spreadsheets, answers to poll questions, book reviews, slides, pictures, all sorts of stuff, a fitness log, a photo of their work set at home, a drawing of themselves, audio, they can record themselves. Google Classroom will allow them to attach almost any file type. So like even like Photoshop type of files, like Adobe Photoshop files can be submitted via Classroom. Like there's lots of Classroom will accept all sorts of file types. So pretty much anything you can think of them to do, they can attach it and turn it in. So just kind of keep that in mind. A map, creative artwork, they can draw something on a piece of paper, take a picture of it and turn the picture in. Ooh, that was a good one, Tamara. This is how you say my name audio. Oftentimes students, it's the same students whose names people struggle with over and over and over again, right? So I always worried every single year that I was that, the student whose name I know I'm mispronouncing gets that every single year. But you can have students, preemptively submit, here's how you pronounce my name, and then you can listen to them as many times as you need to practice so that you feel comfortable saying their name in the correct way. That was a really amazing idea. Paintings, short answer questions, kitchen science experiments, I love it. Introductory videos, Jamboards. If you don't know what a Jamboard is, definitely check out the recording of my morning session. You're gonna be in love. Paintings, picture their family favorite dish, all sorts of stuff. Oh, Brian says they can design a Google form questionnaire regarding a topic. So you know how you might have had students like write questions that could be on the test, right? Kind of that was like an old type of activity we might have done before. You can actually have them create a Google Forms test, to show like if they can say know the material well enough, they could create something like that. So all sorts of things, great ideas. Okay, this is my tips and tricks slide. Remember that was part of that norm. I kind of previewed this in the very beginning. I said that this is part of that take what you can today and come back for more later. This is the more to come back for later. A lot of your questions that you've had, like, how do I make a copy? How do I do a private comment? How do I save it as a draft? A lot of that stuff is all in here. There are links. So feel free to use this, come back to this at any point in time. I'm gonna go over a couple that I didn't necessarily talk about yet. The to-do page is a feature inside of Classroom. And some people find it really helpful. Some people find it overwhelming. Both are totally fair assessments of it. I have gone back and forth between it for many times myself, but check that out and see if that's useful to you. The Google Classroom app on a mobile device, so like on a phone or like an iPad, a tablet, gives you some extra things you can't do on the web. So I know somebody talked about being able to like draw on students' work or that sort of thing. You can do that in the Classroom app. I will tell you on a phone, because the screen is small, it is hard. It's not super easy to do on a phone, much easier to do on a tablet, but you can actually use that Google Classroom app from the App Store to be able to respond to students' work by drawing on it. You can also, they also have a student selector built into the app, so you could use a phone to like, how I always had popsicle sticks. I would pull popsicle sticks, right, to call on random students. There's actually a student selector built into the Google Classroom app, which works great on a phone. That selector works great on a phone because the screen doesn't have to be as big. But that's another thing. It's just inside the app. We've got the instructions here for Classroom and Synergy Sync Up. If that's something you're interested in doing, the instructions are also here. I didn't talk a whole lot about the stream. The stream is the place for announcements and reminders. Again, it's that first place you always see when you go to Classroom. You can schedule them in advance. You can post the same announcement to multiple classes at one time. You can post announcements just for specific students. It has many of the same features. You'll recognize it. So that's a good thing to just know that that's what the stream is for. Here's how you post in multiple classes. Here's how you reuse posts. I've got our Classroom for Families page linked down here. So again, feel free to share that with families. And I've got our Classroom for Staff page here as well. Actually, the one thing I don't have here is our guidance for Google Classroom. So I'm actually gonna open up a new tab here and just show this to you, and then I will put it in the guidance, if I can spell. I'll put it in the chat so you can grab this resource as well. What we did is we created a page just to help you really start from the basics to go through and get ready for this school year. So step one is create a new class, archive any old ones, and it talks about here's a video of how to create a class, here's how to reuse posts from other classes, here's how you archive old stuff. So someone asked, like, how do I delete a classroom? You actually just archive it, and you can still reuse posts from an archived classroom. So there's no, archiving it cleans it up both for you and for students. So students aren't seeing classes from 3 years ago in their homepage. It talks step two, organize. We talked about topics. We talked about naming conventions, all this stuff. We tried to talk about a lot of this stuff today, but There's even best practices in here. So this resource is great. I'm going to put it in the chat. I will also add it to my deck. So if you've got my deck open, you're going to see the deck get changed, and you'll see that gets added. Okay. And I'm going to go back to my deck here. And so I'm in present mode, so I'm going to add that part later. Okay. Cool. So that is pretty much it. We've come to the end. I've got some more things here for you. The recording is going to get posted here. So the recording that's happening right now, this very second, will get posted on our digital learning YouTube playlists. The slide deck for right now is also linked here, although if you're, I don't know why I did that, because if you're in this deck, you're in the deck. That was a silly thing to link there, but I did, I linked it. And then the Google for Instruction website we've talked about before. So we're gonna go ahead and finish up and close out. It's time for closing moves, 2 minutes to spare. If you would like to, in the chat, feel free to share any sort of like aha, like mind blowing, I thought of this in a brand new way, type of, if you have any moments like that. Feel free to share any lingering, deeper questions, ones that don't necessarily have an answer, but like, I'm wondering how I could have students, you know, submit a video in classroom for a science experiment, you know, just like things like that. Feel free to share those in the chat. And then at SFUSD, we often have spaces for celebrations and appreciations as part of our meetings and trainings. And so please feel free, if you would like to share any celebrations or appreciations, you're welcome to do that in the chat. I want to go ahead and appreciate all of you. You did such a fantastic job today. Google Classroom, again, can be as complex and big as you make it. It can be as tiny and simple as you make it. And so the fact that you were really willing, you stuck with it, you didn't give up. I'm so impressed. I'm so grateful that I got to see all of you today and got to work with all of you today. And if you have any questions at any point in time, please come by office hours. Office hours are staffed by digital learning team members. You can share your screen. We'll help you do things in classroom. We have people come with like a how-to type of questions. We also have people come with like, I want to do this project. How would I set this up? All sorts of stuff. Office hours is just a time we just sit in there and then answer questions for anyone who shows up. So please come through to office hours. We'd love to answer your questions and help you if you have any other questions about Google Classroom. Oh, I'm done a whole minute early. I'm so proud of myself.
I'm gonna take your minute. So everything can be found on the website. So if you're wondering like, where do we go? Go to the website and search for webinars. You'll find the webinar page and all of these resources will get linked there back and forth. Especially a lot of you were saying, what are the office hours? Where are they? It's like Jessica was saying, it's drop-in time where we and our teammates sit there and help and answer questions and find answers to questions we don't know the answers to. But they're in the same type of setting. They're in a meet and we are using a virtual space and the links to these will be posted on the calendar. Once I catch my breath, I will have that updated. My goal is Thursday, you will know everything. Right now, I know for certain Tuesday night and Thursday night from 4 to 6, we have people staffing office hours. We're with you. Breathe. You can do it.
You can do it. Have that grace and patience. Take it with you into the school year. The good news is that everybody is doing a full year of distance, starting the school year as distance learning for the first time. We're all essentially first year teachers again. So just know that you're not alone in this boat and we are here to help you paddle the boat. Don't worry. We are good at paddling and we will help you. So with that, it's 3:01. I'm going to let you go. Please, I hope you'll stick around for our closing panel. It starts at 3:15. I believe we have Dr. Matthews. I know Melissa Dodd, isn't it? There's some students. It's cool to hear what students have to say about distance learning and stuff. So we hope you'll join us for that. Take care. It was great to see you all and have a lovely day.